Now, Mary Ainsworth looked at these attachment patterns and thought, how do these relate to the mountain of data I've been collecting in the home? She discovered something interesting. The mothers of secure B babies, she found, were much more likely to be what Ainsworth called sensitive. These mothers were more likely to be feeding on an infant-centered schedule rather than a rigid 4-hour schedule. They were much more likely to approach their baby immediately when the baby started to cry, rather than saying something like, oh, let them cry it out, it's good for their lungs. Which, by the way, my father told me was the thing to do when my first child was born. And the mothers of secure B babies spent more time in face-to-face contact, playing happily with their babies face-to-face. By contrast, mothers of anxious, avoidant babies were more likely to report disliking contact with their infants, more likely to just sort of plunk their infants down in front of, well, these days it would be probably a video, toys and things, and just leave them on their own. Then the anxious, ambivalent babies had mothers who tended to be rather inconsistent. One week, Ainsworth would go and they'd be feeding on a rigid schedule because they'd read a book about how to feed babies that week, and that was the thing to do. And then the next week or the next month, the mother was feeding on a baby-centered schedule because that's what their friends were doing, and it seemed to stop the baby crying. These mothers were just really all over the place and inconsistent. Ainsworth then developed this theory that the attachment behavioral system is intact in all of these children, but it manifests itself in different forms depending upon the environment, and specifically the environment that the primary caregiver creates. What the baby wants is security. So in the case of a securely attached B baby, he knows that as soon as he bids for proximity, as soon as he turns on that attachment behavioral system, he's going to get what he needs. Mom's going to come back. Mom's going to pick him up. Mom's going to spend time in face-to-face contact. When he's hungry, he cries, and immediately he gets something in his mouth. He doesn't have to wait if it's still 2 hours away from a regimented schedule. So that baby grows up in an environment where the attachment behavioral system just kind of flourishes naturally. Anxious avoidant babies, on the other hand, Ainsworth proposed, grow up in an environment where what they learn is that if they're not too demanding, their attachment needs will be met. They too need to feel secure, but what they've learned is that their mothers don't like them to be all clingy and crybabies. Their mother is always going to come back and always going to have their back if they just keep it cool and keep it calm. In a strange situation, if they get all crying and upset, then they might get rebuffed. So instead, they just keep it calm and cool, and they know they're going to have their attachment needs met. Anxious ambivalent babies, on the other hand, because their mothers are inconsistent, they don't know what the heck is going on. They're just holding on for dear life. So they just get into a strange situation and they don't know what to expect, so they get completely hysterical. So this was Ainsworth's spiel, and it became a very popular, powerful view. If you look at the web, there are all these things about attachment parenting, which is basically how to be sensitive in Ainsworth's way of thinking about it in order to have a securely attached baby. There's nothing wrong with that, but it is important to consider a little bit more broadly.